last Friday from Matthew 5. First of all, we talk about the fact that Jesus did not come to abolish the law but to fulfill it. Okay? And then we get a little bit into this, you heard, but I say to you. And we took the angle when preachers or fellow Christians begin to develop their own opinions on certain things. And they begin to count it as gospel. And that is when what Jesus is saying, what God is saying, is nullified. And one way of putting it is developing what the Bible calls traditions of men. Okay? What are traditions of men or religious traditions? It is when somebody tries to put their own interpretation of the word and make it as if it's the word, you know. The Bible says that the word, no prophecy is of any private interpretation. Nobody is smart enough to come up with their own interpretation. We have a science of interpretation. We call it hermeneutics, but actually it's a science. And one thing about science is it's not perfect. Okay? A scientific theory always has mistakes, and so it's not perfect. So it's just a science. But then if we can just simply, I think what we are trying to do in our Christian life is if we can come to a point wherein this is what the Word says, and this is what we do. That's living by faith, you know. Now the other aspect of you heard, but I say unto you is this: who is the mind and the heart behind the Bible? God. All scriptures are God-breathed, inspired by God. God, okay? So now you have God who became man. Remember what I told you last week? What I don't like, for example, during meetings is when somebody asks a question and somebody will try to, I think Pastor said this, what he meant or what she meant. I have very little appreciation for that. Because the person is right there. I mean, so what I normally would do is I will turn back, I will look back at the person. Is this what you really mean? And sometimes you will find a person, the moment they are put on the spot, yeah, that's what I mean. That's not really what they mean. But somebody think they are too smart. They are probing into the mind of somebody. That's why when somebody says, well, I think this is what he meant or what she meant, Pastor say, I will look at the person and say, is that what you mean? Because really, you cannot do that. You are probing in the mind of somebody, pretending you know exactly what they're thinking. That's too much, you know. Nobody is smart enough to figure it out. Doesn't matter how many degrees you have. Nobody. No, so we have done the same thing to God. Now, again, the author of the scriptures is God. Every scriptures is God-breathed, okay? God, we call it a Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. So when Jesus said, you heard, but I say unto you, who is talking now? The second person of the Trinity who became man. Now, can you imagine when Jesus came, he heard so many people say things about his word. So now what he's saying is, you heard, but this is what I was actually telling you. He is clarifying himself. One of the things that the incarnation of Christ bring is God became man. God with us. Emmanuel. God with us. If he is with us, then he can explain himself to us. Like the teachers of the law had been saying, well, that's abolished already. By the way, that's abolished is not a New Testament or a modern phenomena. Even in the Old Testament, there are people who are saying, oh, it's no longer what the Bible says. In fact, even today, Israel had effectively removed death penalty from their constitution. It's there, but it's not there. Made it almost impossible. But death penalty is in the scriptures. Okay? Why? Because people think that civilization had progress. This is one of the great lies that is being sold to us today, that humanity has improved. Really? Don't we still have wars? Don't we still have rumors? Look, we still have poverty. We still have famine. There is enough food, for example, in California to feed the world. You know. And by the way, those people who are concerned for social causes, Nancy Pelosi, that's their place. You know, they live in California. And yet, they could not even solve homelessness in California. So all of these people are lying. They're just pretending they have human solutions. Nobody has the human solution, only God. There's enough food in the U.S. There's enough pork or pig in Iowa to feed the whole world. There's enough soya beans in Illinois to feed the whole world with soya beans. And yet we still have world hunger. So did we become smarter? Not really. We come up with United Nations. First of all, we come up with the League of Nations. It failed. Now we come up with the United Nations. It's not doing anything really. You see? So when people say, well, we got smarter scientifically with sickness and disease, we are so smart, those scientists can't come up with the solution yet to the coronavirus. This is how smart we have become. We are still helpless. You see? And if we will begin to analyze this, it is pushing us to this type of living. It's called living by faith. And so, with all the teachings that we are hearing now, our society had become very progressive, although progressive movement in religion has really started late 40s, especially on the mid-50s. Oprah, when she was growing up, she belonged to Progressive Baptist Church already. And so this has been in the 50s, the growth of the Progressive Church. But they become very popular today. It's been around for a few decades. But they have effectively altered some of the scriptures that are very simple to understand. Really, you don't need to interpret. You know, for example, if Jesus said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes out of the mouth of God." What does it mean? You have to be in the Word. Do not forsake, Paul said, the gathering of the assemblies together. How difficult is it to interpret that? Actually, you don't need to interpret that. You just need to understand that. So people come up with their own interpretation. Well, pastor say, how about this? My job is this, my job is that. We begin to subject it to different kinds of interpretation. What about if I leave the U.S. and fly out on the 6th day, and I happen to be going to Asia? They are 12, 14 hours ahead. So by the time I land, I could not celebrate the 7th day because it's the 8th day already. You see, we made it philosophical. We become very smart. And yet, in all of this smartness that we have, think about this. In the U.S., who is destroying this country? People who graduated from Harvard, from Princeton, from Yale. Same thing in the Philippines. The corrupt leaders that we have in the Philippines, they graduate from UP, from Ateneo, the best schools, quote unquote. Obviously, they're training the best corrupt people there is, you see. That's one way of looking at it. And so I think it pushes us to look for another answer. Miles Monroe was a Bahamas representative to the UN. Okay? He was a diplomat. He's a preacher, but he was a real diplomat. And so, when he was there in the UN and they were discussing, he said, regarding world hunger, how to help other nations, he said, these are intelligent people. These are people with multiple PhDs, and these are so-called experts. Well, Miles Monroe is a Christian minister. So he said, I have an idea. He said, I think all of these philosophies have not worked. And we have proven that to the centuries of humanity, they have not worked. So he was asked, then what do you suppose? He said, I live by another principle. And they said, what is that? He said, the principle of the kingdom of God. And he began to share to them principle of sowing and reaping, principle of giving and receiving, principle of living by love, living by faith. And he began to just teach them this. And he said, the UN committee that he was part of said, this is a very interesting idea. We'll hear it again, because we have forgotten all of this. Okay, so let's go back. I'm not gonna go into details of this one because there's too much to discuss. Okay, let's go to chapter 5 and let's begin to observe verse 21. Let's take this one by one. But again, I will not go into detail because I just don't want to go into detail. I'm just brushing through this, okay? You have heard that it was said to our ancestors, do not murder, okay? Everybody will like that. Do not murder. By the way, Jesus did not say, in the Old Testament it says do not murder. It just says our ancestors. Who are these ancestors? These are the faith fathers. Okay? This will be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This will be Moses. This will be the prophets. Our ancestors do not murder. And whoever murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you, everyone who is angry, you have heard. Remember the phrase, you have heard, but I say unto you. This is what you heard. This is what people keep emphasizing. Yeah, I may have cursed him, but I did not kill him, so you have heard that. But I tell you, meaning Jesus saying, this is what I mean when that word was written. Everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Take that phrase, subject to judgment. It's the same phrase, subject to judgment, in verse 21. Do not murder, subject to judgment. If you are angry, now this is not a normal anger because be angry and sin not. This is rage. This is when you are very angry at each other, you are calling each other names, you are cursing each other. And sometimes they use the phrase, go to hell. That's one of the most damning statement that somebody can make. Go to hell. You are damning somebody. And that will be part of cursing. Sometimes you say, well, I wish you did not exist. It's the same thing. Jesus said, if you... I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Whoever insults, say insults. Now these are not jokes, okay? And this is when we have to be careful with coarse jestings, okay? I know Filipinos are very sarcastic. Not all of our cultures are right. Some of our cultures we have to really trash. Especially when families and friends in the Philippines talk to each other, we have the tendency to make somebody cry, and unless they cry, we don't stop. And it's already coarse jestings. Okay, it says here. Whoever insults his brother or sister will be subject to the court. Whoever says, you fool, will be subject to hellfire. So if you are offering your gift on the altar, and there you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled with your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. Reach a settlement quickly with your adversary while you're on the way with him to the court, or your adversary will hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you will be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will never get out there until you have paid the last penny. That's first. Verse 27. So that's first you heard, but I say to you. What they just heard is, thou shalt not murder. Now Jesus is saying, murder is not what you think it is. It's not just the taking of life of somebody. All of these things. Okay. And I'll explain that to you a little bit later. But verse 27. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. Again, we think adultery is when somebody slept with somebody and they are not married, okay? But I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman, say look, lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Now, look at that. What is the relationship of thou shalt not commit adultery with eye and hand? Okay. Now, Jesus is explaining to us now what he meant when he inspired the prophets to write, thou shalt not commit adultery. It means multiple things. Or it's multiple symptoms, but one thing. If you look at the woman with lust, that means when you look at a woman, the woman was dressed in a manner that solicits lust. And you can discern this in Proverbs. I told you, Matthew 5-7 is like Proverbs in the New Testament. In the book of Proverbs, it even talks about a woman dressed in red. Now, there's nothing wrong with red, okay? But that was the color in those days that prostitutes wear. Okay? Now girls have make-ups. In those days, they have certain things that they use to redden their face and their lips. They have been doing that. But more so, the way they dress. That's why Salome, the daughter of Herodias, was actually almost naked, if not totally naked, when she danced before Herod. And this is the how do you call this? The character of, who is that queen that Esther replaced? Vashti. When the king asked her to come and show herself, what she was telling her actually is to dance before his guests, the nobles. And she will dance because she was very beautiful. She will dance almost naked. And Queen Vashti doesn't want her honor to be desecrated like that. She refused to do a seductive dance before the people. Now remember, who is the God of this age? Satan. Today's fashion that is meant to solicit sex is from the devil. Are you here? And it is interesting how Christians are so lacking or so dull, lacking in discernment, even Christians are just copying worldly fashion. Now listen, we are told to be decent and appropriate in the way we dress. Because we are not supposed to be enticing a person of the opposite sex for some or solicit a sexual activity. By the way, this goes for both sexes. What's the relationship of the eye? Because you cause somebody to keep looking at you. What's the relationship of the hand? Because the tendency is to touch. Okay. So really, this is getting into the relationship, even in the dating relationship. Are you here? Okay, just pretend you're not here, okay? You're not here. In dating, even by the way dating partners touch each other, it says here, better to have one of your hands cut than go into eternity with both hands and yet you go to hell. Verse 31. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife must give her a written notice of divorce. But I tell you, everyone who divorces his wife, look at this, except in a case of sexual immorality, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Now this is another thing. Why do people divorce? It says here, the only acceptable reason for divorce is because the woman was guilty of sexual immorality. The one who was guilty of sexual immorality was the offending party. But what it is saying is, if, for example, I find another woman, I'm married to my wife Anne, and she is living right, and I begin to be lustful towards another woman. And so I begin to fabricate trouble, so that she can be mad at me and challenge me to divorce her. That's illegal. That's a sin in the scriptures. Because some people, they divorce because they found another one. That's what's being prohibited here. Because the moment you get married, till death do us part. I mean, the word divorce, the picture used in the scriptures there is like the cutting of the flesh. I mean, for example, you girls or you boys, did you see somebody and say, well, I like his face, I don't like my face, let's change face, let's cut our necks and let's change heads. You don't do that. That's divorce. Literally, that's what divorce means. Or do you find somebody, you're a girl, and say, I like her legs, she's got long legs, let's exchange legs. You can. That's the meaning of divorce. The moment a person is married, they are one with the spouse. And so, whenever a couple gets into divorce, there's always a pain because it's the cutting of the flesh. Okay? Verse 33. Again, you have heard that it was said to our ancestors, you must not break your oath, but you must keep your oath to the Lord. But I tell you, don't take an oath at all either, by heaven, because it is God's throne, or by the earth, because it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. Do not swear by your head, because you cannot make a single hair white or black. But let your yes means yes, and your no means no. You take that passage, there's really a lot of simple truths there. Number one, when we want something from the Lord, we have the tendency to make vows. What Jesus is saying, what I really meant is avoid making vows. That's what avoid saying, in the name of God, I promise you this. God says, do not use my name, because it's holy. When God says something, he does it. Can you do what you say? Now, look at this. You do not swear by your head, because you can't make a single hair white or black. Today we are still trying that. Huh? We dye our hair to make it black. Jesus said you can't do that. You have no ability to do that. It's simple, right? Well, I dye it. No, I have nothing against that, by the way. If you want to color your hair, color it. But you said you cannot change its color. Its color is its color. What he is saying is nobody is smart enough to even change the color of the hair. You can cover the color of your hair, but you cannot change it. That's all you can do. Okay? Can you imagine that's in the Bible? You cannot change the color of your hair. Ay, ay, ay. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. 38. You have heard it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, but I tell you, don't resist an evildoer. On the contrary, if anyone is lops you on the right cheek, turn the other to him also. As for the one who wants to sue you and take away your shirt, let him have your coat as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who asks you, and don't turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You know, some people are very legalistic. But by the way, we have to be very careful with this. Because it's a matter of the heart. When it says, an eye for an eye, that means that's the letter of the law. This is what it says. What Jesus is saying is, do not be legalistic. What matters the most is relationship. You know, like for example, you are in a restaurant, and it says, if we don't serve you within 5 minutes, it's free. Right? So some Filipino will make a scene. It's 5.5 minutes. Actually, this is what's being discussed here. Being very legalistic on certain things, that you sacrifice relationship. Well, this is what it says. You know. And sometimes we focus so much on that one, we forgot what relationship is. Because in families we have rules. Like I told my wife when I brought her to Israel, not this February, the other last year, I told her that's my gift to her for 3 birthdays, 3 Christmas, 3 Valentines, 3 anniversary, everything that has gift giving, 3 years. Now that is what I said, and because she wants to go to Israel, she immediately agreed, yes, sweetheart, yes. Well, I could come to her and say, well, there goes your 3 years of gifts. That's the letter of the law. But I did not really do that. I still give her $1 here and there, Because it's not about the letter of the law, okay? Sometimes you tell your kids, well, this is the last shoes you will buy for this year. Yeah, but his feet got bigger. Okay, just bend your toes. No, you don't do that. The child got bigger. Maybe you gave him too much. How do you call this? Growth hormones. That hey, I bought you your pair of pants for this year. Well, he got taller. What are you going to do? Just keep him wearing those pants, and it's only 3/4 of the legs. You can't be too rigid on certain things. And sometimes this is what we do with God, by the way. Lord, you said 100-fold return. I gave $10 last Sunday. 10 times 100 is 1,000. Where is the 1,000, Lord? That's not what is being discussed there, okay? And I think we have to avoid being legalistic. You have heard, it was said, love your neighbor. I'm in chapter 4, verse 3. I'm verse 43, I'm sorry, chapter 4, verse 3. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward will you have? Don't even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers and sisters, what are you doing out of the ordinary? Don't even the Gentiles do the same? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Now that pertains to the motive. Why do you give gifts? Because your birthday is coming. You know, the amazing thing that I have observed here is if a relative or friend that we are invited to celebrate birthday or something is poor, we tend to give less. Mahirap lang naman yan. Just give him a pack of toothpicks. And then you are invited by a rich person. Man, you borrow money to give gift to that rich person. So what happened is that becomes unjust also. Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit more. You heard, but I say unto you again, here it requires a higher level of understanding. And as I said earlier, Jesus is saying, this is what I'm really saying to you when the law was written. First, murder, when we talk about thou shalt not murder starts in the human heart. Anger is a natural emotion. Anybody here never been angry? Huh? Anybody here never been angry? If you raise your hand, you committed lying, okay? But all of us do get angry. Anger can be a righteous emotion. God is an angry God, like God is a jealous God. But do not turn it into rage. Jesus is saying here that we must not have an uncontrolled anger that can corrupt the heart. And the moment your heart is corrupted, your behavior will be corrupted. The reason why behavior is corrupted, the heart is corrupted. Sometimes your anger overtakes you. Okay? Back home, when I was in high school and college, riding the jeepney, there was a student discount that the government began to offer. Like, for example, if the fare is 50 centavos, now I think it's, well, I don't know now, 2 pesos. How much is the fare now? 10 pesos? Who cares, you know? We don't, I don't know how much. How much did we pay in the jeepney?
I thought
15. Okay, 15 pesos. Around 50 cents. If you are a student, you get discount. You only pay, say, I don't know, 40 centavos. I'm telling you, some jeepney drivers and passengers fought over it. Because some old people will bring an ID. I'm in high school. What? Over 10 centavos. I'm in high school. You're not in high school. You know, and they will borrow somebody's ID or fake some ID. And I have witnessed this, people fighting over these little things until they curse at each other. I mean, you're dealing with 10 centavos. And they begin to hit each other. There is no more reason why it corrupts the heart. It's a matter of principle. Yeah, 10 centavo principle, you know. And you forgot that there is a relationship bigger than that. Now, you don't condone sin and cheating. But there must be a way of solving these problems. But you cannot, siblings fight each other. I know, because I had siblings, and now I have children who fight each other. You know, you can't believe it. And I'll tell you, siblings can be very mean to each other. Yeah. I know why siblings, they are more tolerant to the outsiders than the insiders. Right? If it's an outsider, we exercise more patience. But if it's an insider, if it's a sibling, if we can kill them, and we become bad. That is a foul. You are allowing your heart to be corrupted. So murder begins at the heart. That's why the operation of love becomes very important. We cannot, some of the things that the problem is we have no example really, especially in the political arena. That people can come up with lies just because of anger. Well, I don't care if it's a lie. I just want him in jail, or I just want him to suffer. I didn't do that. Doesn't matter. They're just, it's deep-seated anger. Actually, it's uncontrolled anger. You have to, I said this so many times, use anger as a tool. Have you noticed if you're always angry, nobody believes you anymore? Because that becomes your personality. Oh, look, he's angry. Oh, don't pay attention to him. He's always angry. Use anger as a tool. Because if you don't, it becomes a norm. And nobody listens to you. It's just like when you hear a politician make a promise, you're a fool if you listen to them. They don't do their promise. That's why Trump is an abnormality to them. This guy actually is trying to fulfill his promises. We are so used to liars. When somebody tells the truth, we can't live with it. We can't live with it. In fact, in our houses, we'd rather have somebody tell a lie to appease us. To appease us. And sometimes we beg for people to lie, to appease us, because we don't know how to handle the truth. Like for example, it's in simple things. Your wife comes to you and say, they do certain things with their face, right? Maybe they change their eyebrows. There's nobody here like that. Maybe they change their eyebrows and or they change their hair. May mga bagay yan, di ba? So, the wife comes to the husband and said, husband, how do I look? And the husband, you look like Dracula now. And the wife said, what did you say? Huh? You're asking me. What? Am I ugly now in your sight? You cannot handle the truth. You see? Because, and it's in a very simple thing. You just cannot handle the truth. Huh? I really don't know how to deliver this more easily than this, Let's stop with the illustrations, okay? Second, adultery begins in the soul and down to the human spirit. When God said, thou shalt not commit adultery, what he meant is this: do not even keep looking at a woman with lust. The word that was used was violent. Gouge your eyes out. It's better to go to heaven with only one eye. Of course, you're not going to go to heaven with only one eye. But this is a violent immorality, or lust is a violent attack of the enemy on our soul. There is what they call as sex addicts. These are addicted to sex. It's a violent attack on our personality. People's behavior change. You're looking at a very gentle man or a very nice woman. The moment lust enters their heart, they just it's violent alteration of personality. That's why sometimes you don't understand. This is a very violent, how do you call this? Sin. I was listening to 700 Club radio broadcast, and it was talking about the daughter of Marlene Hickey. She has a ministry in Africa called Saving Moses. What is Saving Moses? Saving Moses is a ministry for the children of prostitutes. Because these prostitutes have no education, they have no means of providing for themselves, and they have kids, and they cannot afford a daycare. So what they were doing is will just drop their kids somewhere and then sell their bodies. Or one woman was saying, while she is selling sex, her baby was beside her. So the daughter of Marlene Hickey developed a ministry called Saving Moses. Yeah, that's a violent job. For a woman to open herself to abuse, to sickness and disease, that's a violent job. And so what Jesus is saying is men should deal with their lust violently as well. If you can't control your eyes from looking where it ought not to be looking, gouge it out. No, I don't want any of you here to be coming to church this Sunday with only one eye, okay? That's not what I'm saying here. But it's just picturing a violent response. If you cannot control your hands for being so touchy, and it should not be touching things, it should not be touching, cut it off. Which means we have to be very careful how we behave towards each other. We have young girls in this church, including my daughter. I wouldn't know how to react if somebody will be so presumptuous to come to DJ and put his hands around her waist and hug her. I think I will resign for a moment as a pastor, And by the way, I'm not joking when I say that. I ran this through my mind because I have seen this in churches. By the way, in our old church, it was Valentine's for the youth. I was not teaching, but I was going to my office. And some youth came in the church, and we went to the church together, and they were giggling. A couple of them are sons of our members. And I said, oh, this exciting night, let's see whom we can take out, whom we can hug. And that's in our church. Just taking advantage. Now this is probing into the heart of a person. I may open the subject of courtship to my sons. I mean, Joseph can date and John can attempt to date. James is not allowed, right, James? You see, he's not answering. This is problematic. What I told Joseph this. I said, be friends, but you have to be very respectful. And John too, be very respectful. Do not lead on or play with the emotion of somebody. Because that is mean. Now some girls are like that. They lead on some men so they can receive some gifts. That's violent right there. You guys are very quiet. I'm being bothered here. Because really this is a mature Christian behavior or spirituality that Jesus is teaching. And he's saying, this is what I'm telling you. This is how it should be. That's why in the Old Testament, and even in the New Testament, really you don't find courtship. But that was a different system of family and governance. Now it's different. Back then, parents are very involved. Parents are involved in looking for the spouses of their children. Now parents doesn't even know that their children are dating. So you cannot apply. Because dating, if you are not careful with that thing, really opens up the participants in the world of the devil. Yeah. Now I'm not against that, but boy, you've got to have some self-control and some level of maturity. I think that's why in my opinion, you should date when you're ready to get married. Otherwise, you're just playing with fire. Now, some parents, and I say this strongly, who says, well, my kids has to experience that. You want them to experience hell. That's what you mean. Now, remember what Jesus said when he was teaching us how to pray. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Yeah. Have you guys noticed when Israel was about to leave, well, when they were leaving Egypt? Remember the map, this Egypt, this Israel, right? This Egypt is here, Sinai Peninsula, the Red Sea, and then Israel is there. There is a highway, they call it a coastal highway along the Mediterranean Sea. That's the shortest route. How come God led them like this? Cross the Red Sea, cross the Jordan River, and attack from the center on the rear. Instead of just going like this. Maybe they could have done it in 1 week. The Bible tells the answer. It says, God did not lead them, again, we can call it coastal plains. God did not lead them to the coastal plains, lest Israel be discouraged and turn back. Why will they be discouraged? Because that's the territory of Egypt. They are having business with Damascus. And so that highway is where there are Egyptian outposts, there are Egyptian soldiers. Can you imagine Pharaoh changed his mind? You have armies on the way. When Israel says that, they could be very discouraged. So God says, I will not lead them into temptation. That's what it means. I will not lead them into temptation. He led them the other way, away from temptation. Now, that's why we parents, part of raising our children in the fear and knowledge of God is not to lead our children into temptation. That's why it involves, do not put on girls' clothes on your boys. You're leading them into temptation. Do not put on men's clothes on your girls. You're leading them into temptation. Yeah. That's in the Lord's Prayer, right? Lead us not into temptation. Hey, DJ, why don't you're going to school anyway, why don't you wear a miniskirt just this Saturday? No members in the church, nobody will see you, so that you will be the same as everybody else. I'm leading her into temptation. You see. But that is a prayer. Lead us not into temptation. Okay. So, third, divorce must not be used to commit adultery. It is only allowed to keep oneself pure. Because the other partner is already committing adultery. The moment the other partner commits adultery, the relationship becomes impure. God doesn't want you to be impure. The reason why you can divorce the person is because the person becomes impure. Okay? Oath, next, oath or vow. So when made in the name of God, must be kept. Do not be too quick in saying, I promise this. Okay? My wife, I know what the Bible says regarding promises. My wife sometimes, because of our relationship, she knows how I think, she claims. But my wife will sometimes, and I'm there, sometimes make a commitment, and I'll say, oops, I don't think I approve of that. And then she will smile. Well, sweetheart, this is just... I said, no, I don't think I approve of that. See, as a husband, I can nullify her vows. Same thing with my kids. But because I am the authority in the family, God put it there in the Word. It's anti-feminine society, anti-progressive philosophy. But that is what's in the Bible. We should be very careful in making promises or vows or oaths. Pastor Gino, remember, Pastor Gino, he was asking his members, and the members swear to him, to the death! They don't know English that much. Maybe what they meant is, till we kill you, So they almost destroy him. But today people can justify and say, well, Pastor Gino did it. And listen, those members made a vow. They made a promise. God never took those promises lightly. Remember in this anniversary what Pastor Brother Willie taught? And he reminded us when we were in Central, and even our leadership meeting, because he asked me, who among your leaders do you think are faithful? So and they saw the trouble coming ahead. And some of those leaders made a promise. Yeah, we will do this. And they walk away. We sometimes wink on that. God doesn't wink on those promises. Because when you make a vow, when you make an oath, you better keep it. You better keep it. Because God does not forget. Are you listening? Wala na ako mag-gamit, si DJ na lang. Love also does not, by the way, do not have a vindictive heart. Do not think of getting even. Okay? That's why when somebody says, carry this bag, go an extra mile. Do not be vindictive. You cannot help others from taking advantage of you, from lying to you, but do not be vindictive. I make my wife anxious whenever I tell her that should my former church in the Philippines ask for my help, I'll be more than willing to help, because I love the church. And she will tell me, are you nuts? Are you crazy? I said, of course, under contract, I'll have some conditions. Because you can't be vindictive. Don't be stupid, but you can't be vindictive. Okay? Do not plan on things, on how to get even, on how to attack somebody. Don't do that. And the last portion here is, love does not discriminate. Do not love, listen to this, do not love to be loved back. Because love is a personality. God is love. Love because it is in your nature. Okay? It is in your nature. Now, I should never say, well, I will act like a man to attract a woman. No, I should act like a man because I am a man. That's my nature, even if there is no woman. Because I am made a man. Love is like that. You love because it's your nature. You don't love to be loved back. If you love only to be loved back, that is not love. In the political world, that's what they call as quid pro quo. No, it's not like that. God is love. For God so loved the world. Does the rest of the world love him back? No, but he still loved them. The Bible even says God sends rain to the just and the unjust. Because you love not to be loved back. Because it's your nature. Okay. Well, and it's 9 o'clock, so let's stop right there.